Welcome back to the course. In this training, we'll be covering the real goal of titles, the best practices for titles, including 16 different strategies and actionable tips to get more clicks. We'll look at some case studies from my channel and the thought process behind the titles and why some worked well but others didn't. And we'll also cover everything you could want to know about writing titles and optimizing your video packaging to get more views. Now, an important note, a huge amount of the thumbnail training will also be applicable to titles as well. I've split this into two trainings as titles and thumbnails have their own nuances, but you should consider the thumbnails and titles overall as the packaging, as they need to work well together and a lot of the same principles apply for both. Okay, let's dive in. Firstly, the real goal of titles. Many think the title is supposed to describe the video in the most accurate way possible, but if you're playing the game of YouTube, you need to reframe this. The title is supposed to give people the urgent feeling of I need to click that right now. This is one of the most valuable pieces of advice you'll ever get about titles, as it will force you to think about them very differently. Because this means quite often the title won't fully describe exactly what the video is, but will instead create an emotional reaction or stir up curiosity and a feeling of wanting to find out more. As long as the title is related enough that the audience don't feel lied to, then the title doesn't have to be a perfect match or description of what the video is. For example, how to hire people could become how to 10x your business. Because explaining how to hire people can 10x your business, but the latter option is something that appeals to more people, sounds more intriguing, and makes people want to click immediately. If you don't have a good title and thumbnail, you probably shouldn't do the video. That's why it's so important to think about the packaging before going ahead with the idea. If it's not an idea people want to click on, they won't see the video. So remember, the goal of the title is not describing the video, it's to sell people on why they should click. The good news is that there are many ways to say the same thing, and I'm going to give you a huge amount of actionable strategies and tips that really work so you can make all your titles much more clickable. So let's go through the best practices and strategies for titles. Number 1, optimize for human psychology, not search engines. The biggest mistake I made when starting out, and the mistake so many creators make, is prioritizing search engine optimization. So much YouTube advice out there talks about finding the right keywords for your title, but if you want the most views, then search is fool's gold. If you want to go viral, views will mostly come from browse and suggested, which is YouTube showing your video on the homepage and suggested bar, even though people weren't specifically looking for it. So my first rule for titling videos is to ask yourself, are you titling for search and algorithms, or are you writing for actual people? Good titles understand human psychology. Remember, the algorithm just follows the audience. Write something real people actually want to click on. Don't stuff keywords. In fact, I do precisely zero keyword research. Think about who will enjoy this video and optimize the title for them. A very simple way to think about this is don't be boring. SEO-friendly titles are often very dull, like 10 tips for being productive, or how to be more productive. Contrast that with something like how I 100x'd my productivity, or how I finally beat procrastination, or the biggest hack for being productive. Exact same video, but much more interesting titles for humans to actually click on, as opposed to having a searchable phrase in the title. And you want to know the crazy part? When you optimize for what people want to click on, even if it's not search engine friendly, you'll still rank high in search results. I made a video on a guy called Modun, and even though I don't even mention his name in the title, my video is the top search result on YouTube for his name. YouTube knows what the video is about, so it's still going to show it, as YouTube wants to show the videos people actually click on. Instead of me using a very literal title like The Story of Modun, I went for something that sounds more unique. The Unicorn Hunter, the craziest billionaire ever. It has striking imagery of the unicorn hunter and creates curiosity and intrigue because you're wondering, why is he the craziest billionaire ever? Best practice number 2, shorter and simpler titles. When I first started YouTube, I figured it made sense to maximize the info I put in the title to give people more reasons to click. But this actually had the opposite effect. I have consistently found that shorter titles that are more concise and get to the point faster almost always do better. There's data to back this up. A study of over 261,000 titles found that titles shorter than 54 characters can expect to get about 30% more views. Don't be too wordy. Consider what words you can cut out or shorten from your title. How can you say the same thing in a shorter and more direct way? Shorter titles are easier to immediately understand. Not just that, but long titles cut off. They get the ... on the end, which means the title no longer makes sense. You ideally want a title that doesn't cut off at all. So, make sure you check the title on thumbsup.tv to see how it will look in different places on YouTube. Do any words get cut off? If so, will the title even still make sense? So for example, here's an old title I wrote years ago. Social Media Origin Stories. How YouTube began, why Insta was terrible, and Snapchat, and then you get the dreaded ... It's horrible to even look at this title. There's just so many words making it unclear, but as you can see, my third point in the title about Snapchat completely cuts off anyway. So, as well as making your titles shorter, also try to simplify them. Don't try to be too clever. We're trying to communicate one simple idea. Because remember, people are scrolling and not paying a lot of attention, so too much information is just overwhelming. It's better to distill the video down to one core idea. Don't overcomplicate it. As soon as I started writing shorter and clearer titles, my views increased substantially. Of course, you need to pair this technique with some of the other techniques in this training. It's about using a combination of them. Not all of them at once, but mixing and matching what works for each video. Strategy number 3 for titles. Reuse formats that work, including outside your niche. You don't need to come up with a totally new title every time. Many successful creators just take what's already working and adapt it to their topic or idea. Don't be afraid to emulate what's working, especially in other niches. Copy popular title structures and model formats that are already proven to work. So, some example formats: The Truth About X. X changed my life. The Rise and Fall of X. You're wrong about X. I stopped X and this happened. How X really works. How to X without thing they don't want. So with each of those formats, you would just plug in the words related to your video where it says X. This is why it's so important to be a continual student of YouTube. Always looking at what titles catch your attention and consider if they could be adapted to your videos. Another extremely useful piece of advice is to double down on what works for you. When you have a hit, it's amazing how well just reusing that format again works. People seem to think if something does really well, they need to try something new. But it's the opposite. A lot of my titles end up being fairly similar as it works well for my channel. Some of my titles are literally the same structure, such as The Insane Truth About, and then I just insert whatever the company I'm talking about is. Or it'll be some variation of that at least. So don't be afraid to double down on what's working elsewhere on the platform, or even on your own channel. That's what almost all of the top creators do. Title strategy number 4. Make it accessible to a wider audience. So you can see in this example here, the first one was Strange Applications of the Magnus Effect. The second one was Basketball Dropped from Dam. Compare the top and bottom title thumbnail and combination here. Both are for the exact same video from the channel Veritasium, but one performed significantly better. Why? The bottom packaging appeals to a much broader audience. The top one is for people interested in quite a niche scientific effect. The bottom one is clickable by a mass audience as it can appeal to almost anyone. So, consider how you can word your title to be interesting to the widest group possible. Don't be too specific that only a very niche segment of the audience would be interested. So for example, instead of the literal topic, like how to do an overhead triceps extension, which is a very narrow focus and appealing to people just wanting to learn one specific exercise at this particular moment, instead, zoom back and think of the deeper why that someone would be clicking, such as how to get huge arms faster, or how to get a body like Brad Pitt. Those are things millions of people would want to click on, even though the content of the video would still be the same. With my channel Magnates Media, a lot of my videos are essentially just business biographies, but I know if I titled it that way, it's not going to reach the maximum audience. That's why my titles often revolve around one element of the story that I think more people would be interested in. For example, my video on the story of FedEx is called Why FedEx Bet Their Entire Company in a Casino. Now that's actually only one part of the story, but it's such a bizarre fact that people who aren't even interested in the story of FedEx would likely be intrigued by it, so it appeals to more people. So how can you frame your video title in a way that a larger amount of people might want to click? Title strategy number 5, fame jacking. Incorporating names and brands people already recognize is always a powerful technique for titles. Like we said in the thumbnail training, you can essentially steal the fame and recognition of someone they do know. We have to be brutally honest and ask, why would the audience care? And if they've never heard of us, they're probably not going to care about our personal opinion. So for example, a title like My Opinion on AI is going to be a horrible title. But Is Elon Musk Wrong About AI could be a very effective title. You could still give your opinions on AI within the video, but you're hijacking Elon Musk's recognition and credibility. Another example, nobody wants a video on my tips to run faster, but how Usain Bolt runs so fast could get a lot of views. So try to package your content in the wrapper of something already popular and something people already recognize or care about. That way you can leverage their fame and authority on the subject. Title tip number 6, open loops and curiosity gaps. Ask a question the audience needs to click to find the answer to. It has to be something that's going to make people genuinely curious, where they'd be annoyed if they didn't learn the answer or the truth or the results. Many inexperienced creators give away the answer people want to know in the title, so then people have no need to still click. For example, how much money do I make from YouTube? It's going to be much more intriguing to click on than giving away the total amount in the title or thumbnail. You're basically telling half the story, but making them watch to close the loop and finish it. One of my most popular videos is called How WhatsApp Makes Money. If you scroll past that, you might be pretty curious to know the answer and want to find out. Whereas How Facebook Makes Money wouldn't work as well, as it's an easy answer. They make money from ads, we all know that. It works best when it's a question they can't easily figure out the answer to without clicking and watching. Make them curious. Or another great simple example here I saw from another channel, this keyboard should not sound this good. Of course you want to click to hear what it sounds like, and so did 17 million other people. Number 7, sell the end result. People either want to gain some kind of benefit or move away from pain. And so a great strategy for your title is to think what problem you're solving for them, the bigger fundamental result, and focus on that end result rather than the process. So instead of my system for taking notes from books, which is the process, it could be how I remember everything I read, which is the end result the audience want to get. Likewise, I saw this title on YouTube. This biblical principle helped me escape the rat race. It's promising to get them away from the pain they're in, being in the rat race. So make a bold promise, and the title should sell them on the transformation they'll get from watching the video. Sell them on the vacation, sell them on the end result that you're going to deliver, the thing that they actually want to move towards or away from. Number 8, defy expectations and challenge assumptions. A big mistake is having a title the audience already agrees with, and so they have no need to click. Why it's important to have fun while making YouTube videos. Immediately you go, yeah, I guess that kind of does make sense. There's no need to click and listen really. The title should be counterintuitive and defy expectations. Try to challenge the assumptions most people have so the title seems more surprising. You want something that people don't assume to be true, so it stops them in their tracks and makes them more curious or challenges their beliefs. For example, I saw a video title, Stop Chasing Money. It's a more contrarian approach, and these more unexpected titles work extremely well. Likewise, the title, You're Setting Goals Wrong, would be better than Why Goals Are So Important. The first one challenges assumptions. So think of how you could frame your video in a more shocking or unexpected way. Number 9, emphasis and stylization. Capitalization can affect the look of a title, and also where the emphasis in the title is placed. For example, the secret to getting rich fast, that's a normal sentence. Or here's the same title again, but capitalizing the first letter of each word, in my opinion, normally looks better for titles. But then we've got the secret to getting rich fast. This variation emphasizes the secretive nature of what's in the video. Or the secret to getting rich fast. This variation emphasizes you're going to help them do it quickly. Or you could even write the title with no capital letters, because sometimes all lowercase or use of punctuation stylistically stands out, and arguably has a slightly more personal feel. So where do you want the emphasis to be in the title? Consider using capital letters, punctuation, and grammar to affect the look of the title, as it can change the meaning and perception of the video, even if the words are the same. Strategy 10. Have a strong point of view, and take the idea to the extreme. You want to have a strong point of view in your titles. Don't be passive. We want to try and make bold claims in the title. For example, why you need to do X is much more definitive and strong. So if I was trying to name this training, I could say, Creators need this title strategy. It's much more impactful and creates a higher sense of urgency than if I just called it useful title strategies. Or on the flip side, a strong point of view would be saying, never do X versus try not to do X. When the stakes feel higher or the statement is stronger, it feels more important we actually find out what the video is talking about. On a very similar note, try to take the title concept to its extreme. Instead of one of the most promising football players, you could just write the most promising football player. People love superlatives, the most extreme version of something. They want the biggest, the fastest, the craziest, the most intense version. So those most extreme words are powerful to use in your titles. People don't just want a crazy interview moment, they want the craziest interview moment. So the more definitive, strong, and authoritative titles generally work a lot better, even if you slightly backtrack and add caveats to the bold statement you made within the actual video. Number 11. Make the clickbait true. A great phrase to remember with titles is make the clickbait true. Try to think of what would be a really ridiculously extreme, over-the-top title and then actually make that video. You want something where someone can't just scroll past it because they think, did they really do that? Surely that's not real. But then deliver on it in the video. This is the formula for a viral video. Make an insane claim, then back it up with an even more insane video that delivers. Or at least consider a way of framing your video that is still technically true, but just sounds more absurd. When giving your video a title, consider that if you were a casual viewer who had not seen your channel before, could you scroll past the title without going, damn, I really want to see what's inside that video? Because if not, maybe the video itself needs changing, or the title needs to be more dramatic and hyperbolic. In my view, it's not clickbait if the viewer leaves happy and doesn't feel cheated. If they do, it would hurt your credibility. For example, I have a video called The Craziest Story You've Ever Heard, but it really is one of the craziest stories I've ever heard. If I titled every single video like this and people came away going, oh, it wasn't actually that crazy, then they'd be put off from watching in the future. But as long as they leave satisfied, then it works. Make the clickbait true is a really useful framework when considering what videos to make. Number 12, brainstorm more and use AI to help. The simplest hack for getting better titles is to come up with more ideas. Set aside time to brainstorm different titles. Don't just settle for the first one that you come up with. Given how important we know titles are, it only makes sense to spend a disproportionate amount of time thinking of different options. It's so easy to get complacent and forget how important the title is. Remember, significantly more people see your title than your video, and you can split test as many titles as you want. Think of it as working your idea muscle. Just like any muscle, the more you work it out, the stronger it grows. The more you try to come up with titles, the better at it you get. And don't be afraid to come up with bad ideas. The point is to just come up with as many as you can, and almost certainly some good ones will come along too. So, set a minimum target of titles you have to come up with. Forcing yourself to come up with more titles gets you to think in different ways, and think outside the box with totally different formats you may not have considered. Once you have a long list, you can consider which create the most curiosity and excitement to click on. Get feedback from other creators on this too. It helps to get other people's opinions and ideas. Also, make notes of good titles you see around YouTube that make you want to click, and even go into other channels and look at their most popular titles. If it's worked before, something similar can likely work again. You can also use AI to help you, like asking ChatGPT to come up with titles for your video topic. Just give it prompts like, keep it below 60 characters, use dramatic wording, make it intriguing, and write 20 versions. I find AI titles by themselves are not normally quite good enough, but they absolutely point you in the right direction and give you new ideas. Just experiment with prompts to find what works for your niche. As a final tip for brainstorming, I'd recommend you research further about copywriting and headline writing. These two skills, which are typically associated with sales, are actually really effective for writing great YouTube titles, as you're essentially selling people on your video. Strategy number 13, emotionally charged titles. Spike an emotional response. Fear, sadness, desire. People often click impulsively, not rationally, because you trigger an emotional response within them. Viral videos very often have some emotional element to them. Unfortunately, negative emotions do particularly well. People love drama and conflict. Although extremely positive news and joyous things can work too. For example, really heartfelt and heartwarming titles. Son tells his parents he's paid off their house mortgage, has 8.6 million views on a channel with less than 20k subs, as it connects with people's emotions. So, always ask, is your title triggering an emotion in people? And if not, can you reframe it in a more emotional way? For example, I saw a video title recently, "This video will make you hate Iraq." Or another title, simply, "Wow, this is evil." In fact, a study of almost 70,000 links showed that the most powerful headlines are polarizing. The stuff at the extremes, whether overly positive or overly negative, they generated the most interest. It's also interesting to look at which videos do best on news channels. It's almost always the most emotionally charged headlines. For example, Donald Trump, "The world is going to be blown to pieces," 5.6 million views. Go woke, go broke, 3.3 million views. No matter what side of a debate someone is on, if it's a controversial topic or a contentious issue, it does tend to attract more attention, and so you can use emotionally charged topics and words in your titles to help get more views. Strategy number 14, the who cares test. Change the frame or positioning. Always be brutally honest when you read your title, and ask, who cares? Meaning, who cares about hearing this particular topic or title from you? I find it's really useful to be as objective as possible about this, because a lot of this is tied to proof and credibility. So an example, 10 tips for a happy marriage. If this video is just coming from some random person they've never heard of, who really cares? A random stranger doesn't have much reason to click. Whereas if the title was, "Couple of 20 years share secrets to happy marriage," there's proof built in that we should listen to what they have to say. Likewise, if there's a productivity video called 12 Productivity Hacks, if Tim Ferriss posts this, then maybe some people will care. He has a prominent reputation in the productivity space. But again, if someone you've never heard of posts it, not many people will care about their opinion. So a better variation may be, "I became the most productive man alive for 24 hours. I tried Tim Ferriss's ultra productivity system, this is what happened. Productivity gurus lied to you. You're wrong about productivity, here's the secret." These titles all fit the same video, but in a way that a random stranger may care a lot more. You're just changing the frame and positioning. If you can't think of an interesting title for a video that a total stranger would actually care to click on, maybe the idea or topic itself just isn't interesting enough and the video isn't worth doing. Generally, for the best ideas, the title ideas will come easier. Strategy 15. Secrets, FOMO, and urgency. It's great to give off the vibe you're revealing some kind of secret or mystery within the video. That's why I'll often use a format like "the real reason for X," as though I'm peeling back the curtain on something. Even just using words like secret can create so much intrigue. It can also be very effective to play into FOMO, the fear of missing out, by using a title that viewers will feel they're missing out on if they don't click. A lot of the finance channels like Graham Stephan do this very effectively. They'll often use warnings and create a feeling of something urgent happening that you need to know about right now. Here are 3 random titles from his channel. Government shutdown imminent, rates spike, stocks collapse. Urgent, Federal Reserve freezes rates, stocks decline, housing fails. Americans will run out of money by January 21st. A lot of the titles even feature the words breaking, urgent, warning, etc. that make you feel you need to click immediately. They tend to indicate that something fearful could happen, and of course, nobody wants to be caught out or feel unprepared. You think, oh wow, I need to know what's going on there. If you believed all the finance YouTube titles were completely literal, it would seem the market is always collapsing and everything is going wrong. Of course, in reality, it's not normally very urgent at all, and in the videos, Graham normally gives a very balanced and rational perspective. But you have to play the game to some degree, and FOMO and urgency are powerful tools in your arsenal to get someone to click the video and find out more. And I do want to be clear, you need to get the right balance with this. You don't want to lie, you just want to focus on how you can frame your video in a way that really does feel important to click on now. Because hopefully if the content is good, they really will be missing out if they don't click. Number 16, power words. The exact words you use can make a big difference. I mentioned how I often quite use a title like "the truth of" and then the video topic. But just adding one extra power word in there can give it a very different meaning. So for example, the disturbing truth of X, the horrifying truth of X, the insane truth of X, the shocking truth of X. And just to be clear, I'm not talking about X the platform here, I'm talking about you filling in whatever your video's about where it says X. But those little tweaks add a whole new element to the title. So figure out what are the power words in your niche that get more clicks, and double down on those. It's also worth using a thesaurus to consider alternate words you could use that mean the same thing. So for example, instead of the word win, you might use the word dominate. Instead of big, you might use huge. Testing these different variations help you say the same thing in a more creative and unique way that stands out. Now let's look at a case study from my video on Tencent. As you can see, this video got over 10 million views, and yet it's an hour-long story about a business many people have never heard of. Of course, the packaging of this video is definitely a huge part of the reason for that. If I had called this video the most literal description of what it is, the story of Tencent, I'm willing to bet very good money it would have done nowhere near as well, even if the video content was exactly the same. The title would have had no emotion, no intrigue or curiosity, and it wouldn't have appealed to a wide audience. It would be a fairly small amount of people interested in that. It also would have had no urgency to click right now to find out more, because it fails the who cares test. So instead, I went for the secret Chinese company that owns everything. Now, I'll fully admit, this title is sensationalized. It's clearly dramatic, and to be honest, it's pushing the boundaries a little of how over the top I personally like to go, but I'll explain why this worked here. You can see it hits a lot of the different factors we've talked about in this training, like using secrets, being emotionally charged, and creating an open loop and curiosity gap. So, firstly, one thing that may interest you is when I was writing the script for this video, the title was different. In my mind, the video was called Tencent, the secretive Chinese company that owns ... everything? Now, this is not too dissimilar from the current title, but there's a few very key differences between what I titled the script and what I actually ended up using as the YouTube title. Number 1, I made the title slightly shorter and more concise so that it was more easily understandable, easier to read, and it wouldn't cut off on parts of YouTube because it's too long. Remember, shorter titles generally perform better. Number 2, I took out the word Tencent, so I didn't even mention what the company was in the title or thumbnail, as the goal was to create intrigue. I wanted people thinking, wait, what is this company? And if you write Tencent in the title, you've already answered that and there's less need to click. Number 3, secretive became secret, which just sounds more mysterious in my opinion. Number 4, the question mark on the end sounded like I'm backtracking a bit. Whereas just writing the company that owns everything makes it sound like a statement of fact, which really increases the WTF factor. Of course, in the video, it quickly becomes clear, of course they don't literally own everything, but the main theme of the video is they own so much, and so this is an overdramatic simplification. This is an example of taking the idea to the extreme, like we talked about earlier. Now, to be clear, my original title is more accurate, whereas the title I used on YouTube is more optimized for views. But of course, the goal of the title is to be your headline to get people to click, and this certainly did that, over 10 million times. But remember, if the content didn't deliver and people weren't satisfied with the video, YouTube wouldn't have recommended it so much. But if you can have an over-the-top title and actually deliver on it, that's the recipe for a viral video. Case study 2, my Netflix video. We often learn more from our failures than our successes, and when it came to my video about Netflix, it was definitely a bad start. At the time, this was the longest video I'd ever posted, over an hour long, and so I decided to call it the Netflix movie. I thought that would make it stand out from just normal videos and sound more impressive. But this absolutely failed the I have to click that right now test. People generally aren't going to YouTube to watch a 1 hour plus movie. That's a big commitment. So instead I changed it to Why Netflix is Collapsing, the truth about Netflix's empire. This new title uses quite a few of the strategies we've talked about throughout this training. It's much more intriguing. It opens the loop of why Netflix is collapsing and what the truth really is, giving the impression of something secretive. It also defies expectations slightly, as we think of Netflix as a very successful company. Plus, the idea of a collapsing empire paints a vivid picture. It uses unique wording that complements well with the burning thumbnail. Even though there's a lot more info in this new title, it's still short enough that the characters don't cut off, and in this case, the extra info helps give people more of a reason to watch. As a result of all that, the new title got well over 5 million views. It performed way better than the original title, the Netflix movie, which was just too unclear and had no real stakes or urgent need to click. Now, I find this one an interesting case study because most of the video is actually about the rise of Netflix. It's only nearer the end that it focuses on why Netflix was struggling. And not completely collapsing, of course, but I add all the nuance in the actual video since you can't do that in the title. But despite the fact that the title isn't the most accurate way to describe the entire video, watch time is high, the feedback was very positive, and so the title still worked well and delivered enough on the promise of the title. In other words, I focused on one of the most interesting elements of the story rather than trying to title it to reflect the whole story. And for these longer videos, that's often what you need to do. So, I hope that gives some insight into the thought process behind titles, and shows you the importance of changing the title if something isn't working as well as expected. It really can make a massive difference. Okay, we've covered a lot in these last few trainings, but now you have a huge list of actionable strategies you can implement for both your titles and thumbnails. And if you do spend more time working on your video's packaging, I can guarantee you're going to start getting more views. I'll see you in the next training.